Despite the recovery from recession, with a growth rate of about 1.40%, Nigeria still needs to attain inclusive growth. The Nigerian economic outlook and the imperative for inclusive growth and development was the focus of the discourse at the February 2018 Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce breakfast meeting in Lagos. Keynote speaker was Mr. Kyari Bukar, chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, who gave insights into the state of the Nigerian economy.
The assumptions and outcomes are optimistic. It assumes that crude oil will average $67 per barrel in 2018, which is above the 2018 budget benchmark that is being considered by the National Assembly. On crude oil output, we assume attainment of the 2018 budget assumptions of 2.3 million barrels per day. OPEC might stop us from doing that because I think they have allowed us to exceed our quota, which is 2.2, but they still are not forcing us to keep to the 2.2 level. So we could produce on average 2.3 million barrels per day. So on those backdrops, we also added some efficiencies by policymakers on implementation of some of the reforms. So if you add those three pieces of assumptions, then we are projecting an outcome, a real GDP growth of 3.5% in 2018, driven primarily by agric, manufacturing sectors, and obviously the oil sector would also contribute its bit. Furthermore, oil revenue for 2018 increases by 30% to 3.6 trillion naira, compared with the budgeted figure of 2.44 billion. Unemployment and underemployment rate falls to 30%, while inflation rate hovers sub 15%, largely as a result of exchange rate stability, lower inflation during 2018. So that's the optimistic scenario. This acknowledges that crude oil price and output will remain same as in 2017, assumes that crude oil price and production will average $60 per barrel and 1.9 million barrels per day. The outcome is real GDP growth of 2.3%, oil revenue increase by 25% to 2.44 trillion, which is exactly the same as what we had in 2017. Exchange rate, external reserves will face some moderate pressure due to the FX outflows arising from uncertainties coming from the upcoming elections in 2019. Scenario 3 is the pessimistic assumptions. It assumes lower crude oil price and production, 48 on the average, and 1.4 million barrels per day. And with that, we believe that real GDP would be around 1.5%. Manufacturing sector growth slows down. Oil revenue decreases by 7% to 1.8 trillion naira. Inflation will go up to 17%. There will be fuel scarcity, food shortages. The misery index will go up. Underemployment and unemployment will go up to 44%. Those are our three different assumptions. Changing the growth narrative. What does it take for us to have inclusive growth? Nigeria's growth model needs a rethink, and placing priority on inclusiveness should be a preeminent consideration. Making growth inclusive is not a negotiable priority for the government. Good enough, the ERGP prioritizes job creation by deepening the existing job creation programs as well as launching new ones. Its assumption on the growth path is clear, and with the help of supportive monetary policy, economic expansion, all of those could conspire to gain momentum. This is, however, conditioned on a favorable outlook in the oil sector. In the case of a decline in oil revenue, the CBN would likely step down and clamp down on FX supply rather than empty the reserves in order to preserve sovereign creditworthiness, which essentially would starve the real sector. Lower revenue would suggest that the increasing debt profile would be running at an unsustainable pace and prove to be destabilizing. Eventually, the return of policy uncertainty cannot be ruled out. However, efficient utilization of resources in the production process could forestall a lot of downside risks, as well as make growth resilient along its journey to a potential level. In 2018 and beyond, the concern for the economy should go beyond the narrative of mere growth. The emphasis should be on ensuring that more resources are efficiently utilized. The benefits of growth are equitably distributed, and resilience is built against downside risks. The average citizen must contribute to and benefit from the growth process. To put this into perspective, there are 3 pillars of inclusive growth, which policymakers must pay attention to. They include 1, achieving growth that is broad-based and led by the productive sectors, such as manufacturing, construction, and agro-processing. 2, pursuing social inclusion with reforms that addresses the education, the health sector, and skills development. Skills development basically enhances the long-term value of any human being, because once you have something that you can do by virtue of those skills, you have a lifelong opportunity to contribute to the economy. 3, providing social safety nets for the poor and vulnerable citizens. These pillars must be backed and supported by good governance and strong institutions.
He also shared key steps that should be taken by the government for the 2018 economic outlook.
To achieve growth that is broad-based and led by the productive sectors, the following recommendations are crucial. There is need to ensure macroeconomic stability. This can be achieved as follows. Maintain the exchange rate stability by sustaining existing policies that ensure FX availability. 2, ensure price stability by intervening urgently to prevent fuel scarcity, provide interventions in the agri sector to increase food supply and ensure availability of FX. Implement growth-enhancing policies, including intervention funds for such sectors as agri, manufacturing, construction, and transportation. And, more importantly, maintain or have in place favorable interest rates, which will spur economic growth. 2, implement ease of doing business reforms across states. Now, here is the secret of this World Bank ranking. They do their survey in, I believe, 3 or 4 locations. Guess what? Guess which ones? Of course, we are sitting in one of those locations. Now, and this is something that I say, when you do a survey in Lagos, in Kano, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, and then based on that, you improve the ease of doing business index, you are not comparing it with, say, places like Jigawa or Borno, then you have a major problem at hand. So that's why we are insisting that the subnationals must also be included in these ease of doing business conversation, so that they make it easier for small, medium enterprises, as well as outside investors that want to come into those states to have quick way of setting up their businesses, getting licenses, and so on and so forth. So that's why we believe that implementing reforms to reduce regulatory bottlenecks across sectors at the states level is very important. Review and passage of ease of doing business legislations at the state levels is important. Work with state governments to review and implement reforms aimed at improving business environment.
Mr. Kyari Bukar speaks further on Nigeria's pathway to attaining inclusive economic growth.
We've seen the oil sector grow in 2017 by, depending on who you talk to, and the reason being that the crude oil prices have gone up consistently over the course of the year, and production volumes have gone up. So if you remove that component, the only other sector that has also fared well was agric. So agric also grew, I believe, at the rate of 3 or 3.5%. Now, when you look at those other sectors, on all counts, they are still either negative or they are flat. Whether it is the services sector, the manufacturing sector is beginning to come up, and that is because of the availability of FX for raw materials, plant and machinery, and so on and so forth. However, on all other sectors, the growth had been negative or stunted or flat, which means that a big chunk of our economy is still teetering, and that's not a good sign. However, we probably see a better performance in 2018, and we expect that there has to be those key things that the government needs to do efficiently, so that in the area of policy implementation, when there is the level of efficiency that we are advocating for and investing in our people, then we will see the other sectors also recovering and growing. So the growth is, the getting out of the recession wasn't with a huge amount of energy. Good thing, yes, we are out of recession. The cautionary thing is for us to ensure that we continue on that trajectory purposefully and deliberately.
With a growth rate currently accompanied with a high employment rate of 18.8% and receding inflation rate of 15.1%, the onus is on the government to partner with the private sector, as this will attract critical investments that create job opportunities and uplift millions from poverty.